You know what the problem is? There's not enough of the student population telling these leftist professors to, excuse my language, quit their bullshit. The problem is, this isn't really about college professors being college professors anymore. It's about these college professors playing games and expecting you to be exactly like them. And we gotta stand up and say, we're students. We're paying you to teach us, not to indoctrinate us, not to play your games. And I can give you a very good example. In fact, let me get back here so you can see what I'm talking about. And this might take a while, but first of all, this right here, all this is just a draft. And I'm going to tell you something. I even sent it in an email as a draft. And what do I get? For lack of a better term, a load of bullshit. For example, I mean, if I did the grammatic errors, some of which I apparently did, I can forgive that. But then again, if core, as in Peace Corps, is supposed to be, if core is supposed to be a plural word, or if Peace Corps is supposed to be a plural phrase, then why the hell can't I say, specifically, Zarnecki will focus on the health threats that the Peace Corps have faced from their inception in 1961 to the present time. I would get screwed over if I said the Peace Corps has, because they would say, hey, core is plural. C-O-R-P-S. As in, hey, not just one body, not a corpus, but core. I mean, don't be ridiculous. You're looking for every way to get me. You've miserably failed on that one. Let me tell you another one. I'm so sick of these professors. I'm sick of them, and they're not really professors. They're indoctrinators, and they're dominators. They use that power over model that Patricia Evans talked about, and that I cited in my blog concerning, by the way, some of my family members who say, play the game. Really? Play the game? I want to be a student, not a liberal. By the way, I don't use the term libtard because I have a cousin who, for lack of a better term, was considered mentally retarded in the day that he became mentally disabled. To make a long story short, he was given a drug that he was allergic to in a very high dosage, and that's how he became mentally disabled. So I'm not going to use the term libtard and be unfair to people like my cousin who do not deserve to be disparaged just because they've gone through what they've gone through. And speaking of more just unbelievable, just totally unbelievable crap, let's see, is this the one? Oh, he says here, so I give a personal anecdote as to why I would never serve in the Peace Corps myself, because I'm talking about the Peace Corps and their various health issues, and I say here, trying to look for it, because I am so angry right now. There are other examples. Oh, yes. I say, to give a personal anecdote as one example, because I talk about, I say, quote, his or her decision would become all the more firm, that is, one's decision not to serve in the Peace Corps. His or her decision would become all the more firm if he or she considered tuberculosis as a possibility with which he or she may have to deal. Incidentally, Zarnecki, by the way, do you notice how he uses the third person because they do all that crap where he can't use the first person? But incidentally, Zarnecki, as she sits here and types, recalls that her great-great-granddad, Andrew Rusnock, lost his job in Swearsville, Pennsylvania coal mines due to tuberculosis and black damp. And so I give a little anecdote about that because, hey, I'm a tuberculosis risk because stuff like that does carry down through the generations, and we're seeing tuberculosis come back. And I didn't make a long point of it, but if personal examples and anecdotes help so that people see that you're not, for lack of a better term, just some bullshitter and just some bystander who doesn't care about your subject. And he says, not relevant. So this guy is looking for every way to get me, and this is not just him. This is every professor who, if you don't agree with them, or if you stood up in the past, they will look for every miserable way to make your life hell. And we've got to stand up and say, enough's enough. And let me give you more examples. Like, and they say they want students to be critical thinkers and creative. So I talk about, in terms of, this is going to be long, but stay with me. So I give an example of, because one woman talked about how some kids in her Peace Corps service that she had to deal with, she was working with some kids and they had culture shock and jet lag. And they asked students to be creative and think for themselves and think of situations outside of the box. Well, I did. So I invented a situation. I said, to further illustrate, use Zarnecki's hypothetical case of Shirat Moscovich. Oh, by the way, this is what he says about the whole case. This shows how you can't be a critical thinker. You can't do your own work. It says, this hypothetical does not answer questions to, and Michelle's right, I can't read his handwriting, to something. I advise you to eliminate it. Oh, so you're advising me not to be a student. If you'd like me to go further, by the way, I'll name the professor. I'm not going to name him in this video because I could get sued. But if you email me privately, I will name him. And I'm going to say he's a very high-ranking professor at this school. Like I said, if you email me privately, I'll say who he is. I have no problem with it. And he's mad because someone had said something once about conservatives or conservatism and what have you. And I was mad. I just finally said, that is a lie. And then the professor had later said something about conservatives being quote-unquote anti-union. And I said to him, no, we're not anti-union. We're just anti-union corruption. Well, you know what? Apparently this professor doesn't like that. And he's not the only professor I've had issues with. One professor that I used to respect, again, I'm not going to name anyone in this video, but if you want to private message me, please go ahead and do. And the only reason I'm not naming them is because I could get sued, unfortunately, and yet, well, I'm not paying them, my mom's paying them, and I could get in trouble with her, unfortunately. Yes, so much for being a student. Thank you for raising me the way you did, Mom, because it's becoming, unless you intended me to be a robot, thank you for not raising me to be a student, because I see now that you're actually raising me to be a robot. And by the way, you are one of the relatives who said, just play the game. Well, thank you for A, having your raising me being totally useless, because I'm supposed to be a robot now, or thank you for raising me not to be a critical thinker. Pick one. Anyway, so my point is this. Back to what I'm saying. So, I'm not going to name these professors, but I gave you one example. Now I'm going to give you the other example. One professor who I used to have respect for, it's disgusting. She didn't even know the difference between a republic and a democracy. She said basically they were the same thing. Worst part is, she has her PhD. And when I was confused about something she wrote on the syllabus, my God, I got into trouble for it. Really? Wish I could find it. It's here, I think, for her syllabus that you got to do something, this and this and this. Well, I thought the thing was for one thing, and so I asked for clarification, and I get screwed for it? So much for being a student and asking questions I don't understand something. So much for trying if I'm going to fail anyway, since I fail when I try. But part of it, like I said, is because these professors look to make you fail. So we got to stand up and say, enough's enough. You're not going to screw me over. You're not going to do your power over model on me. You're going to treat me like a student, and you're going to be a professor, not an indoctrinator, and not a dominator.